Please welcome Senator Michael Bennet.
Thank you.
Say that I was very, very taken with that moment. Yeah. And I hope that you will continue to be as passionate as you're running for president and not be circumspect or calm or anything. I want you to be exactly like that. Can you do it?
I don't know if I can do it over and over again, although when my daughters heard that speech, they said, uh-oh, we've heard that voice before. All these other people were writing, well, here's mild-mannered Michael Bennet, and what's happened. What happened to me was I reached my breaking point. The foolishness of this broken government that we have, a shutdown, a 35-day shutdown in that case that achieved absolutely nothing. Donald Trump got nothing out of that, and the American people lost, which is what happens when we have these shutdowns. We shouldn't shut the government down for politics, period.
Well, there's a lot, to me, there's a lot to be outraged about, which we daily have an outrage with this government. Yesterday I was watching this guy Acosta try to explain what he did during the Jeffrey Epstein case. He had no regrets. He had no apologies. He answered questions as if he was a normal person, which, you know, I have questions about whether he has any morality at all. You know the story out there, right, about the girls?
Right.
The sexual abuse of these girls. And what did you think of it? Did you watch it?
I think you should resign. I have 3 daughters. That plea agreement allowed Epstein to plead to charges of consorting with prostitutes. So these young women that were abused by him have now been referred to as prostitutes in this pleading. I mean, it is absolutely horrendous and ridiculous. And you know, the guy's going to go to jail for a long time, which is good, but I think Acosta should resign, too.
But do you think that there's somebody he's covering up for also? I mean, there seems to be tentacles to this story. It's not just this one person who's exploited all those girls. There must have been others. How much energy did this one pervert have?
A lot, apparently, but it's going to turn out, I think it's going to turn out that there were people that helped him do what he did. And some of them may turn on him, too.
And apparently earlier we were talking about the infighting. Actually, you know, I feel the reason I skipped that is because I felt we did it. So that's why Joy did the question. So
well, I
go
have
ahead,
another question.
Go ahead.
So we've had a bunch of candidates that have come across. You're the 17th candidate that has come here, and
thanks for letting me squeeze in.
Of course, it's wonderful having you here.
Number 17, by the way.
You're polling at less than 1% right now in most polls. I just question, you know, why you, why now? What's your argument to our viewers why you think you can be the person?
Well, I'd say, first of all, if you look at, historically, if you look at the polling, nobody who's leading today ends up winning. So Barack Obama, at this point in the polls, was not yet 30 points behind Hillary Clinton. That came later in November. Bill Clinton was polling at something like 1.3% when he was running, and Joe Lieberman was leading the field when he was running. So this is early days, and I think I've got different experience than everybody else in the race. I've won 2 really tough national races in a swing state in Colorado. It's a 3rd Republican, a 3rd Democratic, and a 3rd Independent. No one else could say that. That's tough to do. We're going to need to be able to do that to beat Donald Trump. That's what the country looks like now. That's what the country looks like now. I've spent 10 years in the Senate, which is long enough to know how to get some things done, but also long enough to know why the important things are not getting done because of the government shutdown nonsense that you're talking about and other kinds of things, the politics that are getting played there. And before I went to the Senate, I had a life outside of politics. I was a school superintendent at Denver Public Schools. It's a $1 billion school district, 95,000 kids. Education is critical to this country. Today,
it's a big issue. Huge issue.
We have the worst income inequality that we've had since 1928, and today our education system is actually reinforcing that income inequality, not liberating people from it. We need to do something about it.
How do you think Betsy DeVos is doing?
Terrible, man.
Yeah.
Go there.
Well, let me ask you.
Let
me ask you that then, because this is your first time joining us, and there's something that I like to do called my policy speed round, talking about issues that matter to voters. Very quickly, let me know what your plan is to fix the student debt.
It is not to forgive it, as Bernie has said. We need to lower the cost of college. That's the most important thing, and make it easier for people who have the debt to repay their debt. But forgiving it that's not a progressive policy. That's an effort, I think, by him to get votes. And I think I'm more for focusing on free preschool than I am for forgiving student loan debt, because I think it'll make more difference to kids living in poverty in this country.
So universal pre-K, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, climate change, Green New Deal?
I'd say I support the findings of the Green New Deal, but I have a different set of policies that I think will reach the middle of the country. Climate is an urgent and existential problem, and the next president needs to start addressing it on day one of their presidency.
The racial wealth
By
gap.
the way, it's an existential problem that we have a climate denier in the White House right now. He should be the last climate denier ever to be in this White House.
You touched briefly about the wealth gap. There's a significant problem with the racial wealth gap as well. Reparations, would that be part of your solution?
I've supported the bill to study reparations in the House because I think there are distinct issues relating particularly to African American people in this country. There's a straight line that you can draw from slavery through Jim Crow, through the redlining and the banking and housing to mass incarceration today. And I think it's important, as somebody who's been a school superintendent, it's important that we face those facts. What is, I think, really critical for this country is that we have an education system that works for every kid in America, no matter what zip code they are born into, no matter whether their parents were wealthy or not wealthy. We need a system of tax policy in this country that supports parents. I have a proposal called the American Family Act that would dramatically increase the child tax credit in this country and reduce childhood poverty by 40% and $2 a day poverty in America for kids in this country. That's what we need to be focused on instead of the daily distractions of somebody in the White House who cares only about himself and not about the American people. Enough is enough. We need to make a change.
So you were kind of late to join the race because you were diagnosed with prostate cancer earlier this year. And thankfully you've recovered, yes? Fully?
Fully.
All
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is because I would like to know, do you have a plan for everyone else to be able to have the same really good kind of coverage that Congress and Senate has? Do you think it could be something where we all have the same kind of thing?
I have that plan, but let me say first, I have not taken a subsidy on health care since we passed the Affordable Care Act. I'm on my wife's insurance back in Colorado, and that's who handled my operation.
Right.
Not my wife, but the insurance. And the most abiding thing that I came out of that experience with was the knowledge that I found out I had prostate cancer because of a screening that I was able to get because I had primary care because I had insurance. I had no symptoms. I would be sitting here today, Whoopi, talking to you, not knowing that I had serious cancer and it wouldn't be fixed.
You might not be here.
Millions of Americans are dealing with that today. My plan is called Medicare X, which would give every single person in this audience the chance to choose whether you want to keep the private insurance you have, if you have it, or get on a public option. I think that's the fastest way to universal health care in this country.
Well, there you have it. This is somebody to listen to. Senator Michael Bennet.
Yeah, more.
We're keeping Senator Michael Bennet?
Yes.
We're keeping you.
I'm not leaving.
All right. When we get back.
Stay here.
So we are back with Senator Michael Bennet. Joy.
I'm sorry.
Talking to the senator.
They're deep in conversation.
Scared of you. So, here's another outrage for you. There are reports today that Trump intends to move forward with his immigration raids targeting migrant families this weekend. I thought it was supposed to be gangs coming from these places, not families with children. He's going to, raid these people's houses and what have you. They're very reminiscent of Nazi Germany, just saying. I know you're not supposed to make that connection, but I've been around long enough and I've read enough to know that this is very similar to what happened to the Jews. Go in and take them out of their houses. What are the Democrats going to do?
Well, we need to stand up to it. Look, my mom and her parents were Polish Jews who survived the Holocaust. She was separated from her family during the course of the war. I'm not equating the Holocaust to this, but I do know something about what happens to somebody permanently if they've been separated from their family at a young age. I had the great privilege of working with John McCain as part of the Gang of Eight in 2013 when we wrote a bipartisan bill together, 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans, to deal with our immigration system. That bill had $46 billion of border security in it. It had a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million people that are undocumented. It had the most progressive DREAM Act that had ever been written. It was passed on the Senate floor with 68 votes. Trump doesn't understand any of that.
It's not just him. Where are the other 4 Republicans that could work with?
We would have had, it would have worked, and it would have stopped a lot of the problems.
But
and thank you.
And we're here
It
now.
would have made a huge difference, and the reason we got here is because the House of Representatives never took up the bill because of something called the Hastert Rule, named after a guy who's in prison. We need to do better than that, folks.
It's also, Marco Rubio can take some
pedophile.
ownership for that, too. I mean,
Well,
we don't need to rehash this,
But I do think that bill continues to be a place where we can do the work. And in the meantime, we are a rich and powerful country. We should be treating refugees humanely with this in this country, and we can do it. Donald Trump's acting like we're a weak country, and I think that's partly because he's a weak leader.
He's a weak man.
Go ahead.
Yes, just really quickly, at last month's debate, you were actually one of only 2 candidates, though, who did not raise your hand when you asked if you would decriminalize crossing the border illegally. And it actually shocked me that a bunch of Democrats actually think that if you cross the border illegally, it should be decriminalized. Do you think fellow candidates are out of step with the American public on this?
I do. I learned something from John McCain, if I might say so, who was a border senator. He and Jeff Flake were on the Gang of Eight, and I know what's required for Republicans in the center of the country or on the border to be able to sell immigration reform in this country, and one of those things is a secure border. That should be true for Democrats as well. Democrats want a secure border as well. We just want a commitment to our rule of law and a commitment to our history as a nation of immigrants.
Winning me over, Senator. I'm so glad you came to the show. Thank you. Yes.
Let me come back.
By all means.
Well, here's the thing about this show. We do ask a lot of questions, and people sometimes don't understand why we ask what we ask the way we ask. But we're doing it because we're asking for the nation. So when we're asking for an entire nation, we want to talk to people and hear what they have to say so that everybody can make an informed decision based on what you hear, not the soundbite that you see. Our thanks to Senator Michael Bennet.
Thank you.
His new book, The Land of Flickering Lights, Restoring America in an Age of Broken Politics, is out now, and we'll be right back.